welcome. Today we have two special guests, and I mean special guests. These are the two that brought the wall that heals to the city of Revere. And before we go on, I want to thank you, Bob Dobek and Mrs. Brenda Dobek, husband and wife.
Thank you.
And welcome to the Revere Veterans Community Show, which is under the direction of Nick Boer and the Revere Allied Veterans Council.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start with you, Bob, because you bought the healing wall, and tell us, you started out from where, how you got here, and all the things you've been doing.
Well, we left out of Fulton, Maryland. We had the museum set up in the parking lot of New Day, which is one of our sponsors. So when we left in a downpour. The following morning, we were up here in the East Boston Revere area, was escorted into Revere, and set the wall up after a little bit of a time delay with trying to find out how to get the truck unstuck out of the mud. Other than that, here we are.
I know, and you had a nice escort. You had the Revere Police, the
Yep.
Revere Fire from Suffolk Downs,
Yep.
coming down here. And I also understand your wife drives the truck too once in a while. So Brenda, tell us about your experience bringing the wall.
Actually, I was asleep during during the time he drove it up here, but the escort was very nice. It was rather short, but I was surprised with the heavy traffic that you have in this area that the police were able to block it off, so it was safer for the motorcycle riders. And,
Right, they did an excellent job,
Yes,
Brenda.
they did a great job.
Right, so to the Revere Police out there, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to start with Brenda, if I may.
Sure.
Brenda, how long have you been doing this?
We started with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund on February the 16th of 2010.
Wow.
And actually, I have been driving a truck as of June the 8th this year, 17 years. I have 1 million miles accident ticket free. And this, when we got this job, it was not just a job, it's an honor to be able to transport the names that are on that wall all over the country so that the people that died can go back into their community, and it gives the people an opportunity to say goodbye to them.
Right,
Yep.
Brenda. You are really a citizen of the community and a community volunteer and a community veteran for what you do. Bob, you are a veteran of the Vietnam War, I believe, during the war times?
Yes, sir. I went into the service in 1970. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran.
Oh, era. Okay.
Yes. I pulled a tour in Korea, 2 tours in Germany. I retired after 23 and a half years.
Right.
So
Fantastic.
I've got my own buddies on the wall that I grew up with. So this job is very, very close and very personal to me, and that's the reason why I get so absorbed into it.
I got to tell you, I was down in Washington with a group of people from our Revere Senior Center about a month ago, and we visited the original Vietnam Wall. And I've never seen so many people in one place at one time, and they were dropping items off. Could you tell us what happens to all those items that are dropped off there, Bob?
The items that are left there usually are tokens of appreciation, love, or for the fact that they miss the people with the names that are on the wall. National Park Services collect the items, catalog them, and they get shipped to a warehouse in Hyattsville, Maryland to be stored.
In the museum?
No, that is the warehouse that stores them. We're building a museum of sorts. It's going to be the education center at the wall. And the moment we accumulate the rest of the funding, we're going to have an official groundbreaking ceremony. Should take approximately a year to build the education center, but it's going to be right at about 35,000 square feet, 2 stories below ground, climate control. So a lot of the 400,000 plus items that have been left at the wall in DC will be on display there. So a lot of the items that you haven't been able to see, I have, Brenda has, because we've been at the warehouse in Hyattsville, Maryland. These items will be displayed. There's wedding dresses that have been left there, a motorcycle. As a matter of fact, the motorcycle was, to what we were informed, was customized, and
That's the one that was made was from the people in Wisconsin that put together?
yes, sir. Yes,
with
sir.
the 37 dog tags that they have there?
From what we were told, it was 36 dog
36,
tags.
so I
And it was-
correct myself then.
So in the aspect of, this is what we were informed. So a lot of people haven't seen this motorcycle. I have. It's very, very impressive. So it'll be nice to be able to have these items on display so future generations will never, ever forget what we did and why we had to do it.
Right, and that motorcycle that I saw, which I saw on television only, was all different color parts, and it was shipped in from different places around the country?
I'm not really privy to that kind of knowledge, but to the aspect of is when it's complete, it is very very eye-catching. It's a very unique motorcycle. It's just something that is totally all-inspiring and awesome. It's just fantastic.
It is fantastic. And another thing I'd like to say to you is when I was talking to you, I said there was 58,282 names, but you said they added 4. How do they what do they do? They come down and they...
When an individual dies of wounds received in Vietnam, and this is certified, the names are released officially along with any missing in action that we have recouped the remains in the year. The names are released officially on Mother's Day, and between Mother's Day and Memorial Day, the wall is updated. What they do for an additional on a name is they go back to the closest point possible as to when he was wounded, because there's approximately 5 names per line. Some names are shorter than others, so therefore we can kind of squeeze them in at that point, and their names are engraved on the wall. On the missing in action individuals, where we have recouped remains, they would be listed on the wall with a small plus rather than a diamond showing killed in action.
Oh, I see.
So in the aspect that they superimpose a diamond over the top of the plus to substantiate the fact that they were listed as missing in action, now killed in action with their remains returned.
Okay, let's say my son was killed in action, and I come down there and I want to find his name, and I'm like, with 58,286 now.
Yep.
How would I find it? I mean, how would I go about it?
We have not only a directory. You're talking about at the main wall in D.C.?
Yeah, the main wall in D.C.
They have
and also the wall that you brought to
Okay.
Revere.
The wall in D.C., they've got a directory, an alphabetical listing. And we can look up the names alphabetically, and it has pertinent information such as date of death, location, date of birth, home of record, and the far right column will have a panel and line number. It's extremely similar to what we have out here, except we also have a computerized system that we access, vvmf.org/thewall. And in this aspect, we can sort by a name, a city, county, state, a branch of service, date of death, date of birth, location as far as province. In the aspect, I can pinpoint any of the 58,286 names on the wall within a 5-name accuracy. I could put you right on this very same line that the individual is.
Right. You also have a big book there with the names listed.
Yes, sir.
Too.
An alphabetical listing of the book. I can get it probably about 3 times faster on the computer than you can locate it in the book.
That's fantastic.
We've been doing this now. We're rolling into our 4th year as of the 16th of February this year. So I've learned a lot of little shortcuts. It's to me, it's a challenge, especially when a man cannot remember a name, that there's enough I can extrapolate from the individual with just general conversation that I can set up certain parameters that I can search for, and I will find that name.
I got to ask you this, Brenda and Bob. You've been from Massachusetts on the East Coast to California on the West Coast.
Yes, sir. This year we're going to be as far southeast as Goldsboro, North Carolina, as far northwest as Seattle, Washington,
Wow.
as far southwest as La Habra, California, and as far northeast as Revere, Massachusetts. So we're going to be all over the United States this year, and it's going to be fun.
Right. You also said to me that you was in a prison in Soledad.
Yes.
A prison in Salinas, California, I believe
Yes.
it is.
2 years.
Tell us about that.
2 years ago, my D.C. counterpart asked me if I'd like to go to prison, and I reminded him I've done everything I can to ensure I stay out of prison. He said, "No, would you like to take the wall to
Oh,
the
you went
prison?"
to the wall with prison.
We took the wall to a prison.
Okay.
So in the aspect of is they have the largest Vietnam Veterans Association chapter in an incarcerated facility, right?
Correct.
And there's what,
156 Vietnam veterans in the prison, and
What are they in there for, Brenda, if I may ask, just for some of them? Drugs mostly?
Murder.
Some with drugs, but mostly serious crimes.
and for life.
For life. So
Without a chance of parole?
without a
Right.
chance.
And
So
those are the people that...
that invited
Those
us
were
out.
the nicest, most respectful guys that you'd ever want to meet. While during the time frame that we were there was a scuttle between the inmates and the Vietnam veterans. They told them if there was any problem, but they pulled us out of there because we stayed inside of the prison 2 days, and then they took it down, and then we stayed outside of the prison for 2 days. So the skirmish was there the first night, and they had a lockdown, and the Vietnam veterans told the guys to knock it off, or they'd take care of it themselves.
And,
So
and the problem
stopped.
ceased before it even started.
Good.
So when it was kind of comical, because when the assistant warden tried to explain to me that there was an issue that came up last night, I explained to him what happened, and he just had a very shocked look on his face that I already knew what was going on. But you have a tendency to associate with other veterans automatically. You migrate in that direction. Veterans have a tendency to stick with other veterans.
Right. I can vouch for that.
It doesn't matter between which wars also.
Exactly. You and I never met, and today we like best friends.
That's it, because we were brothers in arms.
Right.
So, and it doesn't matter immaterial as to the branch either. So I state the fact that I had a couple of the largest yard apes, a couple of the big boys that followed me around everywhere in that prison, even though I had 4 machine gun nests surrounding us while we were at the wall.
So you must have felt like you were back there.
Yes.
They even cut the fence to get us in there, because the driveway leading into the area was too small for our trailer. So they brought the warden out, and he said, "I don't care what it takes, get him inside that prison."
So
there we were.
they opened up the fence, and we went in, and they repaired the fence, and for 2 days we had the wall set up inside on the prison grounds. Brenda and I would depart daily, and then we spent 2 days set up in a parking lot outside of the prison for the locals. I never probably have felt any safer than I did inside that prison. There's a sally port where, as you're entering or leaving, that they check out your vehicle very, very close to ensure that you're not smuggling anything in or out. And I was constantly teasing the guards in the sally port. As you know, I'm kind of a joker in a way.
Are you really?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
We'll get into that later. The point of it is, though, is I was constantly teasing the guards about one thing or another, and especially when one of the guards suggested a body cavity search, and I asked for somebody that didn't have arthritic fingers. And the very last day he got me back, though, he stated he had some good news and some bad news. And I said, "Well, what's the good news?" He says, "There was 42 guys that wanted to know your wife's first name." And I said, "Okay, I can understand that, but what's the bad news?" He said, "There was 147 that wanted to know your first name." So that's...
You're taking my jokes away.
Well, this will be something that you can add to your repertoire.
Okay, thank you.
So they were very, very respectful. There's a lot of the guys that were non-veterans that said that they finally understood why veterans band together.
That's right.
It's basically that old adage of birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
So they came, even the people that had just been civilians that were there, they came to an understanding as to why veterans
And
would
those
cling to each
veterans
other.
that were incarcerated, did any of them recognize any of the names on them?
Yes, they had friends, and they would come up to the trailer. We had our computers running, so therefore we could look up names, run a printout for them so they could go find their buddy's name on the wall. It was a very, very warm atmosphere, even though knowing that these guys are in for life, for murder, things of this nature. I even asked one guy in particular.
That's sad just to hear that.
I asked him, was it worth it? And he said, "No, I didn't even know the guy's name, the guy he killed." He says, but he just reacted on instinct and responded in a situation. And I believe from what I've seen, it appeared to be something that basically PTSD had triggered in him.
You know, it's funny because, just to change the subject for
Sure.
a minute, we had a soldier that came back, I believe, from Afghanistan, a gentleman by the name of Perez, a veteran. He went into Boston, and he was murdered just by some kook out there. So, you know, it's tough on the parents. But the parents of these boys must feel horrible to have their son come home from Vietnam at the time and have them incarcerated for life.
Yes, yes. But unfortunately, it happens a lot of the time.
Is it the war that did that to them, Bob?
I would say that it might have had a little bit of input into it, but at the same token, I've kept my nose clean relatively, or I guess I haven't been caught, one or the other. But so it's...
You're taking my jokes away.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry, buddy. The thing of it is, though, is it takes an enormous amount of self-control at times. At times, I attributed my side anyways to the fact of being in the military as long as I have, that I can suppress a lot of the angers and things of this nature.
Can I just interject something? Like I said, I was down in Washington a month ago, and I visited the original Vietnam Wall, and I was watching the guard on a ladder climbing up, the one with the yellow hat there. What do they call those?
Those are the volunteers.
Oh, they're volunteers?
Yes.
And he was doing a rubbing for a woman up on the name up on the ladder, and he was rubbing, and the woman was standing over there talking to, I guess, her lady friend, but she was like tears in her eyes. And she says, "That's my son up there."
Yep, yep. It's everyone on the wall, outside of the 8 women that are on the wall. There's 7 Army nurses, 1 Air Force nurse.
Right, and you know the funny thing, excuse me.
That's right.
When I was watching the Smithsonian Channel, which we will talk about, they said there were 25,000 women in the Vietnam War, but only 7 of them are on the wall.
8.
8 are on the
8,
wall.
yep.
Right, out of the 25,000.
Yes, there was USO personnel, there was donut dollies, just various nurses and support personnel in that aspect. The 7 of them had died due to accidents, vehicle or airplane crashes. 1 died due to direct combat action. Not that she was in a combat zone herself, but being in Vietnam, you are in a combat zone. She was in a rear area, hospital-type environment, stepped outside for a brief smoke, and a mortar round landed near her, killing her. So it's, and her name escapes me right at the present time as to which one of the 8 that it was. But the other guys, they are all someone's brother, father, son, grandson,
Yep.
nephew, uncle.
Yep.
So in that aspect, we're all just brothers in arms, irregardless of branch.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions.
Go for it.
Either one of you, both. We were talking about Soldier Dan Bullock, who was the youngest.
Yes.
Tell us his story, because you know it a lot better than I do, Bob.
Well, we had an opportunity this year to go to Goldsboro, North Carolina. While we were there, Brenda and I are well versed on the fact that the youngest individual on the wall, his name is Danny Bullock.
Right.
And he was always listed from Bronx, New York. And when we got to Goldsboro, North Carolina, a lot of the locals kind of inquired from us about Danny Bullock, and it seemed like they had an exorbitant amount of knowledge of this young man. Here to find out he was originally from Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Right.
And he went to visit his grandmother, as the story goes,
In
from
Bronx.
them
Yep.
to the Bronx, and Grandma was confusing him with his brother. So he utilized Grandma's misinformation to...
Senility.
Yes, same. In the aspect of allowing her to sign for him to go into the military
But
under
he was
his...
only 14 at the time.
Yeah, he's right at about 15 years old,
15.
just turned 15. So in the aspect, he went through Marine Corps boot and advanced training, and he was killed in June of '69 and wouldn't have been 16 years old until December of '69.
So he was only 15 and a half.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just a few days shy of actually being officially 15 and a half.
And when you showed me that picture on your iPad or
Yep, my little
smartphone,
phone, yep.
Right. You also told me about the tombstone. Tell the folks out there about
Well,
it.
the tombstone, from what we heard from the locals there, Sally Jesse Raphael had done a story on the family and on him, being the youngest individual killed in Vietnam. And she was so moved by the local people, how they felt toward Danny Bullock, that she allegedly purchased the tombstone. It's a very, very beautiful tombstone.
It is, I saw it.
Black granite. It's really expensive, but the feeling that you get from someone reaching out to someone else in that aspect, it reminds me of why we're doing the job we're doing. It helps bring a little bit of closure to it.
That's why they call it the wall that heals.
Yes, sir. I've been inquired on that, and the only thing I can relate to it is for the fact that if you've ever been wounded, it hurts severely. And if you don't cleanse that wound, if you don't keep it clean, it doesn't heal properly.
That's right.
So since guys mostly have been told all of our life, big boys don't cry, you're not supposed to show emotion.
We do. I usually try not to show emotion, but this does bring it.
It does. But in the aspect of it kind of eats you alive like a cancer.
Right, and I got to tell you, when I was there last night to visit the wall in Revere, there was a couple of Gold Star mothers on there. One was sitting right next to me, a woman by the name of Mrs. Sullivan, who lost her son. And there was another one who lost her son that went out where they put the reed up on there. Upward sort of kind of drops down.
Yep, yep. So it's very, very moving, but in the aspect of is if you don't cleanse that wound, it doesn't heal properly. So sometimes you have to feel this hurt or this wound all over again by opening it up and by cleansing it with your tears and realizing there's Gold Star mothers out there, fathers, Gold Star brothers and sisters,
right.
aunts and uncles. There's other veterans out there that's feeling the same thing as you do. So in the aspect of is if you open your heart up a little bit, allow your tears to flow, you can finally get that opportunity to say goodbye, which a lot of us didn't have a chance to do. We didn't have a chance to say goodbye to our buddies. It allows that wound to heal properly. There's a lot of guilty feelings from a lot of veterans, survivor's guilt as they call it.
Yep.
But as I explained to the guys, someone had to be left alive and basically behind to ensure that we carry on their stories, that we inform people what kind of people that they really were, what kind of heroes they were in our eyes. My grandpa always told me that a hero is an ordinary person that does extraordinary things.
Right.
That heroes are made, not born.
Exactly. I agree with you.
So it's just, it's one of these jobs that I just can't seem to do enough of. It makes me feel very, very satisfied when I can assist someone in that aspect. Get a little bit of closure on the situation. Sometimes guys forget about a name. They try to suppress it so much because it hurts so much.
Some of them never talk about it.
Yes.
Like we heard that talk about his father, who was going to tell him about the war story, but his father never lived that year.
Yep.
The story we heard last night.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's better to get it out of your system now.
Yes.
And a lot of them didn't. They still keep it in them.
And this, like I stated before, it eats you alive like cancer.
Yep.
So this is something that, with the wall going all over the United States, the wall that heals, I feel it honestly brings comfort in the long run. Yes, it does open up some old wounds, but at the same token, it allows you to start dealing with it. There's no way I could tell guys that you got to forget it, because I don't want you to forget it. I want you to remember it. I want you to remember why, though. And then another key point is educating our younger children.
Right.
They have to understand the atrocities of war, the horror of war, to understand that it's a very last resort thing, that you don't rush into it. And you must know and understand history, or you're going to be doomed to repeat it.
Right. Bob, I got to ask you, when you travel around the country, like in Revere, we have the school kids come down. That's why
Yes,
we
sir.
didn't have you yesterday.
Yes,
we
sir.
would have loved to have you. But when you travel all over the country, do you get a lot of the school kids to get the history of the war?
Yes, we do. It tickles me because we get a lot of the school kids on Thursday and Friday, and it gives us an opportunity, as I tell them, I can teach you more about Vietnam in 15 minutes
Right.
than what you'll learn in 4 years. The fantastic thing is on Saturday and Sunday, they've got Grandpa in tow. And they're explaining to Grandpa what happened during Vietnam. So in the aspect of, unlike a dad who would say, well, I already know that, Grandpas have a tendency to say, well, what else do you know about it? And it gives Grandpa an opportunity to open the door a little bit at that point and explain from his point of view, because grandkids have a tendency to hang on to Grandpa's words
Right.
very meticulously. I've got 8 grandchildren, and I'll correct myself there. Found out at 1:30 this morning, number 9 just came into the world.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So it's our grandchildren are very special to us. Our children are, but the grandkids a little bit more so, because
Let us hear their names.
well,
Let us hear their names.
the oldest one is try it again, Evelyn Jones. Then there's Justin Smith, and then there's Thane Smith, and then there's Derek Smith.
Wow.
It's the girls' turns now.
Hope Marie Dobek.
Yep.
And we've adopted her little sister, Kaylee
We have,
Dutcher.
yep,
And then we have Chloe Dobek.
yep,
And did I miss anybody?
the one in New York.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen her twice.
Her name's Maya.
Yep.
Maya Smith.
Yep.
Mr. Dobek, I'm
Yes,
going to
sir.
call you Bob. Mr. Dobek, I got to tell
That's
you
all right,
something
buddy.
first of all. When I was talking to you, you're Polish, right?
Yes, sir.
So let me say something to you in Polish.
Okay.
Jak się masz?
Dubja, dubja.
Dobrze, dobrze. And by the way, you love polka music because you told me that.
Yes, sir.
So the city of Revere went ahead, from the city of Revere, from our mayor Dan Rizzo, and they made you a couple of beautiful CDs by Walter Ostanek, who happens to be Canadian's polka king.
Yep.
So take this back with you on your trip.
I thank you,
Listen
sir.
to it, and make sure the truck doesn't dance around while you're traveling, otherwise
there
we'll
you
get
go.
a ticket.
Yes.
And enjoy it.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure from the city of Revere. But I like to continue talking
Sure.
with you people, if I may.
Sure.
We talked about the youngest. How about the oldest?
The oldest one, from the best of our recollection, was 62 years old, except for the fact that now, since they've added people that have died of wounds received, the oldest one is now 68, so I'm going to have to research to find out exactly who that is. Because these are some of the frequently asked questions that the little ones have a tendency to bring out.
Right.
And as a grandpa, you learn that you pull the grandchildren. So therefore, when you pull a child, the child comes willingly. It's when you push them that they push back. So I entice them to give me a question, and I give them an answer, and then I'll lead into another question, which I give them an answer, and before you know it, they have this thirst for knowledge. And that's when I send them to the computer for something other than playing video games on. And it's nice to hear a report back from the teachers 6 months later when they contact us on Facebook or a personal email and let us know how much the grades have gone up in their class. Because of making sure the child is aware of the fact that they are responsible for their own education. It's not mom and dad and the teachers. See, they're willing to let mom and dad and the teacher down. But the moment they find out that they are responsible for their own education, the monkey's on their back.
Right.
So they have a tendency now not to let themselves down, which just tickles me as a grandpa. It does.
Now I got to ask
Sure.
another question, which I never knew. I only thought there was one, at the beginning, one Vietnam War. When I heard the war was coming, I always thought it was the original war.
Yes, sir.
Then we were told it was a replica. But you say there are 6 walls.
There are
Could you
6.
tell us about something about them?
Yes,
Or
sir.
Brenda, or you?
There's 6 different traveling walls, but of the 6, we're the only ones that's actually affiliated directly with the wall in Washington, D.C. So what the other 6 do, I don't really concern myself with, as long as they're performing a service for the local communities and the veterans. I stay busy enough with our wall that I really don't have a whole lot of time for anything else.
Our wall, it was went into service in 1996, and it is sponsored by the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. The founder, Jan Scruggs,
right.
is the person who went to the Congress and got the wall built in 1982.
Right.
And now he's went to Congress again.
For the museum.
He wants to build an education center, and it's going to be, we've already had a ceremonial groundbreaking that we had in November. And it is going to be 2 stories underground directly across the street from the wall in D.C. And whenever it's built, it is going to cover from Bunker Hill to Baghdad with emphasis on Vietnam. And right now we have a program called Faces Not Forgotten, where we're trying to collect all the photographs of the people that died in Vietnam.
Right, and by the way, Brenda, if I may ask you, if they want to mail the photographs of people that hear this, because this goes on Facebook and YouTube, and any of the Vietnam veterans out there and their families, if they want to donate things to the wall, could they send them to you?
They can send photographs, either they can go right on our website at vvmf.org and go to search the wall. They can look up the individual and they can post a picture themselves online if they have a scanner, or they can send it to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund at 2600 Virginia Avenue Northwest, Suite 102, Washington, D.C.
Suite 104.
Excuse me, Suite 104 at Washington, D.C. at, let's see, 20037 is the zip code.
Yep.
Right.
And then besides the Faces Not Forgotten, we have a program that's called In Memory Honor Roll, where we honor those that have died since Vietnam, either from, it can be for any reason.
Yep.
Right,
And,
Brenda, excuse me.
okay.
The wall that came here on the big van had pictures of these. Can you just hold that up so the camera can get a shot of those 3? Were they the ones killed in action, those 3 that
Yes. Yes,
Young looking boy.
these are guys that, according to what we've been informed, this is exactly how the museum would look on the inside. So therefore, any individual that comes there for the Education Center should be able to input in any request for a face. And it'll bring up the individual's face plus personal information on these monitors. So therefore, this will basically be a living educational museum constantly for generations from now.
Good. Could you repeat that address just one more time for me, Brenda, please?
It is 2600 Virginia Avenue Northwest, Suite 104, Washington, D.C. 20037.
Right, and if there's any information they needed, is there a telephone number they could call, or if they wanted to find out what, if and what?
Yes, there is. The area code is 202-393-0090. That's 202-393-0090. And to learn about the Education Center, they can go to www.buildthecenter.org, and they can actually take a virtual electronic tour through the museum.
That's fantastic.
It is.
It is fantastic whenever you get to look at it. And right now, the Education Center is estimated to going to be cost $85 million.
Wow.
And we have, I'm not exactly sure of the dollar figure because we've had several large donors recently.
Good.
New
More the
Day,
better.
yes, that's the reason why we went to Fulton, Maryland, to New Day USA. They contributed a large sum of money. And they also had, last year, we had Australia donated $3 million toward the Education Center because the Australians helped us in Vietnam.
Australia?
Yes.
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 We never knew these things over here.
Well,
Yep.
this is the reason why there's multiple things, such as you can go onto the vvmf.org, search the wall. There's a section within there. It's called Frequently Asked Questions. As I tell the young ones in school, how do you get an answer to a question? And they look at you kind of funny like. I say, don't you have to ask? And they said, yeah. I said, well, if you go to ask.com, you can type in your question. It'll give you an answer. You refine your question a little bit more, it'll give you more answers, and you can research it that way. So there was many different countries that supported us during Vietnam. And you can Google that up. You can Google Vietnam and or Bing it, whichever way you want to do it. You can ask the computer one way or the other, and it'll give you an answer.
Question for you. When I got to go back about 45, 50 years when I was in my a little younger, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Not as experienced as you are right now with life.
Exactly.
Yes.
The Vietnam veterans that came back
Yes.
were protested. Even when they came back in a casket, we have protesters protesting the family. Would you going around with the Vietnam Wall? You've had no problems, I hope, with during the whole country tour, none at all.
No.
So times have changed for the better for the Vietnam veterans then.
Yes.
We have been accepted in every community with open arms. I mean,
I know what the city of Revere has done that.
Yes.
I can tell you, this was a very small. This was a small escort. We've had escorts out in California up to 632 motorcycles. When we went to Goldsboro, North Carolina, we had 525 motorcycles and a helicopter. A sheriff's helicopter flew with us, and the streets were lined with people. Estimated 15,000 people were along the streets waving American flags. And I was not just crying, the tears were flowing. I mean, it's such an amazing thing that people are welcoming these guys with open arms to say goodbye.
Right. Before we close, I got just a few more questions. People come over to me and they have a name on the wall, the rubbing wall, to rub the names. Now, I know they did that down in Washington.
Yes.
Can they do that on the wall that's in Revere?
No, because the wall that we have, the half-scale wall,
Right.
is basically black powder coated and
Oh, I
then
see.
baked, and then the names are laser etched on, so the depth of the name isn't enough for them to get a rubbing. But we do have rubbing request cards that they can fill out with the individual's name plus panel and line number as to where their name is located, fill out their own information as to where they would like it sent. All they have to do is drop it in one of our collection boxes or just hand it to Brenda and I. We do a mass mailing at the end of the Revere site here to the volunteers in D.C. They'll do the rubbing and mail it back to you for free.
Okay, I got to ask you a final
Yeah.
question. If I cannot visit the wall, but let's say I have a deceased relative or a deceased family member on there, is there a way that they can notify to get a rubbing like you said they do? But how would they do that?
Exactly, sir. All they have to do is just get a hold of Washington, D.C. Direct, vvmf.org,
Yep.
or at the phone number that I listed before at 202-393-0090, and I'm sure that one of us there at the D.C. office would be able to take care of them.
Okay, so now we're going to close it off. And Bob, I've got to tell you, this is one of the most fantastic shows I've had, and we've done about 60 so far. So I got to thank you for
You're
coming
welcome,
up.
partner.
From a World War II veteran, thank you for your service.
You're welcome, sir, and
Even though
thank
it's
you
a
for
little
yours.
late, but thank you.
Well, I'm...
Brenda, I got to tell you, thank you for coming up. And to all the Vietnam veterans who are out there listening, thank you for your service, and I'll apologize for the ones.
I'd like to thank you very much, too, because soldiers just do what soldiers do. Soldier, sailor, airman, Marines.
So I want to apologize for the ones that didn't honor them.
That's fine, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. And God bless you both,
Thanks.
our troops, and the United States of America, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.